Hi, my name is Rachel, and today we're doing another Authors Behaving Excellently. I'm very excited about this. Today's author is Leah Johnson, who is the author of 3 books so far. Her debut was You Should See Me in a Crown, which I did read, and I gave 4 stars, well, 3.5 or 4. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun, and also has something that we don't see often, which is sickle cell anemia rep. So if you're looking for a book with sickle cell anemia rep, it is in You Should See Me in a Crown. This book received in 2020 the Stonewall Book Award. It is a sapphic YA contemporary romance and coming of age story about a girl who needs to win a scholarship, so she runs for prom queen, and part of her competition is this girl that she ends up striking up a romance with. It's very cute. It's very sweet. It also became Reese's first YA book club pick, Reese Witherspoon, in August of 2020. Time magazine has listed it among the 100 best young adult books of all time. Her second book was another YA coming of age story with a romance component, Rise to the Sun, which came out in 2021. And her third book was the middle grade Ellie Engel Saves Herself, which came out this year in 2023. And that book is about a young girl who finds out that she has overnight gotten a superpower. Leah Johnson is no relation to our last Authors Behaving Excellently, George M. Johnson. However, they are both in this series due to similar things, and also they work together. Not exactly the same things, but similar. So something they have in common besides their last name is that their books have been banned. We'll come back to that. Johnson, Leah Johnson, was raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. She was the editor-in-chief of her high school newspaper. She says that in high school she was not prom queen like her main character in You Should See Me in a Crown. She was called the class clown, and while in college at Indiana University of Bloomington, she interned at the Wall Street Journal. She received her MFA in fiction writing from Sarah Lawrence College, and while attending as a grad student at Sarah Lawrence, she started her manuscript for You Should See Me in a Crown in 2018. And also in 2018, February 2018, she wrote an essay for Electric Literature about the lack of diversity in YA books and how this affected her growing up as an avid reader. I didn't know then what heteronormativity was, but aside from a handful of David Levithan novels, which often deal with their own issues of centering cisgender white narratives, I rarely saw much outside of run-of-the-mill middle American, white-bread, straight-to-the-point of cringing love stories. Boy meets girl, girl chases boy. No one ever told me what happens when girl wants girl or girl falls in love with someone who's neither. Heterosexual, upwardly mobile white girls were the yardstick by which I measured myself, which meant I was always going to fall short. Their stories, their widespread representation, were some of the most salient of my adolescence. She talks about reading Forever by Judy Blume as a youth, and she said, that story, as ubiquitous as it has become in the decades since it was published, portrayed a very specific experience for a very specific type of girl, a girl I would never be. But she was presented as the coming-of-age benchmark for us all, and I modeled myself after the girls within those pages for years. They would rotate out often when I read a new book that commanded my attention for the day or for the week, but they had all at least one thing in common. They rarely, if ever, looked like me. Though I did my best to accept their characteristics, I never really mastered the art of how to be cute and quirky, yet aloof and carefree all at once. And all the girls, the characters that I grew up revering, were the perfect cocktail of all of the above. I was intimately familiar with timidity and shame. I could manage being withdrawn and anxious, but the stuff that made up a storybook romance always eluded me. I remember asking myself, what's so different, so wrong about me? What was it about living inside of this body that made it hard to move through the world as effortlessly as them, that made love and lightness so inaccessible? I had been sold a dream that didn't make room for girls for me or girls like me, and no matter how many times I tried to imagine otherwise, the genre that I loved so much didn't seem to love me back. She discusses the impact of her and her fellow black girls being told the line, "You're pretty for a black girl," and this not being a line reflected in the literature that she read. No story have ever warned us about this. None of the girls we had fashioned ourselves after ever heard that particular line. The books that filled the school libraries in our suburban Midwestern town hadn't given me the heads up about what it looks like for young black women in the current landscape, about what my body would represent to my eventual partners and to the world. She says that she had been talking to a close friend about the essay that she was writing. She was excited to hear about it because she has this almost religious belief in the universality of love stories. She believes that's why we cling to them so hard. She says they don't look like us, but they are us. I don't know how much I believe that though. I don't know how to read a story where there's a kiss in the rain without thinking about what happens to my hair when it gets wet. I don't know how to visualize a meet cute at a Brooklyn coffee shop without thinking about gentrification and displaced people of color. I want to still buy into the dream, but I can't, so I stopped just short of reminding her just because we love it doesn't make it ours. So after publishing this essay, which was very well received, she was approached by agent Sarah Landis to help her craft a book proposal. novel, since she already had a manuscript that she was working on. And of her debut novel that came as a result, she said she wanted to take the traditional story of the typical young white girl as the main character that we've seen in book after book and film after film after film, and write a story that could represent girls who don't typically get their story of becoming prom queen told. Queer Black girls should be represented in YA literature. And of this, she said, I wanted to turn those ideas on their heads. Of all the honors and accolades and the love that comes along with being prom queen, I wanted to give all those things to somebody who traditionally has been told that they don't deserve those things. An article from IndieStar about Leah Johnson says that moving to New York helped Johnson put some distance between her and the expectations she felt in Indiana. She loves Indianapolis and knows many people are trying to make it better, she said, but also wants to be honest about not always feeling this like the city includes everyone. This book demanded that I confront those ideas about shame and silence that I've been holding on to about my own queerness and about my queerness in relation to this place where I was raised and the community I was raised in. On the release day of You Should See Me in a Crown, she took to Twitter to say, when I began writing Crown, I was still ashamed and silent about my queerness, but this book is a lesson in radical joy and honesty, a story about a Black girl learning to own her identities boldly without fear. Thank you for showing me the way, Liz. Welcome to the world. I also want to show you a couple excerpts from an interview she did on YouTube.
A buzz phrase that comes up a lot for queer authors, authors of color, neurodivergent writers, the list goes on, is, I wrote the book I needed when I was 15, when I was 16. And of course, that is true. The reality is, I wrote the book that I really needed to read when I was 22 and trying to navigate my queerness for the first time. Because I think in addition to fiction giving us, an expansive world and universe to exist in and lose ourselves in, it also provides us a blueprint for a possible future, right? And so I wrote that. My book was a lot of wish fulfillment. I was like, if I can will this into existence on the page, then maybe I can will this into existence in my lived experience as well. One of the things that I think is most important to acknowledge is that queer folks have always been here in massive numbers. And I think, this is something that George and I have talked about quite a bit, is about like so often queer writers, Black writers receive our flowers for our work after we're gone. And we can't be here to revel in that and see the fruits of our labor, right? And so we're still here and we're still telling these stories. And not only that, we've done it in such a way that we've provided a generation of young people the language to talk about queerness. We've broken space for them to feel empowered enough to step into that queerness at an early age. And so that's, to me, not really a shift in demographics. I think it's a shift in power. And I think this is young people and queer people claiming power in a way that they have not felt able or capable of doing prior to this, cultural moment. And the reason why this demographic shift, to use that language, is so significant to these straight white folks in positions of power is because it is a threat to the status quo. What people want is to not ever have to let go of any of their power. That's how this works. This country is built on the backs of exploitation, right? And so if we can't exploit people's insecurities and their fears and make them feel like they must adhere to the same rules they've always adhered to, that is a threat. And the last thing people want is to have to recognize that maybe they are not in the same position they've always been in. And so there's a shift in the way we talk about these things, but not necessarily in my view of it, not necessarily a shift in the people. There is just a different approach to the conversation on a much wider cultural level. The problem with writing for children is that so often you're faced with adults who don't think of children as human beings with thoughts and feelings and agency. And the reality is, when I was 14, 15, I knew a lot more about my own inner life than anybody could have imagined, right? And so if I had been provided with a text that could have given me more insights into what I was reckoning with, then it wouldn't have taken 10 years of therapy for me to become the person I am today. You know what I mean? So the issue with parental rights is like not so much about I, as a parent, reserve the right to control what my child has access to. Really, to me, it should be a question of, why don't we give children the right that we would give any human being to read and think and be considerate and thoughtful. If all of us are on the same page about the capabilities of Gen Z, right? Every single one of us believes that these are tenacious, brilliant, fierce kids, right? If we believe that about them, if we really do, then why don't we trust them to make decisions about what they can and cannot consume safely? Like, I think that the conversation about like what as a parent you have the right to control is just like, I don't know. I think it's actually not so much about them and not wanting them to let kids read what they want to read, and is more about, well, why don't these parents think of their kids as human beings?
She's right. As a parent, I can confirm that she's right. What we often see is that, quite simply, these fascist book banners do not treat their own children as people. But they also don't just want the parental rights to control their children to the point of dictating who their child is. They don't just want that. They want the right to do that to my kids as well. Which is why I think it's really fucking funny that I keep having to remind them that I never consented to co-parenting with them. And telling Moms for Liberty that is what got me blocked by Moms for Liberty. We'll come back to the book banning in a second. I actually want to talk about another online interview that Johnson took part in. Well, she took part in Y'all West 2020 online, which was called Y'all Stay Home. 2020 was kind of a wild time to have a book debut because you couldn't tour to promote it. So these panels were really the only way to do that in like a communal way. And I love that a couple of things that Leah said on the panel, which was about writing high school students and remembering the author's high school experiences. So I'll link the full thing below, but I want to show a few clips.
At Well Read Black Girl Festival, Elizabeth Acevedo was talking about like what she thinks about when she's crafting her characters. And she was saying like, how can I write these girls so when a Black girl comes to the page and reads this character, they know that I've written this character with so much love that I love them in as an extension of that. And so I think about that every time I sit down to write. Like, how can I write a queer Black girl character that shows you, queer Black girl who's at home reading and maybe doesn't feel welcome in her community, that I love you and I see you. And so like, that's the most important thing, I think, probably when I'm working on character. I think to answer the question about responsibility in writing for young people, one of the reasons why it's so crucial that we diversify the canon that children are taught in schools is because the job of books is to teach us how to be more human and more empathetic, right? And so like if a kid is coming to a book and they never see themselves, or they never see the character that is like them receive a happy ending, or they're told that stories about them are taking over and taking up too much space, those things show teens like how they are to move through the world, right? And so like in the work always, I think there is a responsibility to us to show people we can be better and you can feel the things that you want to feel and you deserve to feel them wholly and without shame.
According to this NBC article about Leah and her work, the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison has been tracking children's books by and about Black people since 1985 and books by BIPOC writers since 1994. It began including LGBTQ identity in its data in 2018. In 2019, 115 books surveyed, or 3.1%, featured LGBTQ primary characters. Between 2021 and today, there have been 176 books that feature LGBTQ primary characters. And where there are LGBTQ books, where there are BIPOC books, there are book bans. The article continues. Johnson said that she recently visited a public school in Boston, Massachusetts that had a large population of low-income kids of color, and a student asked her about the banning of LGBTQ books. They said, "What are we supposed to do?" And then, "What are you doing?" These are the kids I imagine when I write my books, Johnson said, and I could sense this question had a sense of hopelessness, but also this scary, like, you're not just going to take this, are you? You're not just going to let them do this to us? Johnson says books saved her life and that it is disgusting to take the books away from children that could save their own lives. She says both the questions students ask her and the threats to her books are calls to action. Those who seek to limit the rights of queer youth, she said, are not going to stop. This is just the beginning for them, which means it has to be just the beginning for us as well, which means we have to come back twice as hard. We have to be twice as loud and as proud and as bold and as unapologetic. We have to approach this as if it's a fight. This is a real all-out war against ideas and lives, and it has to be taken that seriously. Leah's book has been challenged and banned several times. Every time that Johnson gets another Google alert about her book being threatened with censorship or that it is being placed under investigation for obscenity, she thinks about that student in Boston, and then I go back to work, she says. So her book being challenged and banned motivates her to fight back on behalf of the kids, which is the opposite of what book banners do. They do not center our children and what is best for them, but instead center themselves and their own discomfort. It is at this point, I would love to say a major fuck you to my school board members, Stacy Hahn and Patty Rendon, as well as my county commissioner, Michael Owen, and a biggest fuck you to Hillsborough County residents, Julie Gebhardt, the biggest Karen and lover of book banning within a 10-mile radius of me. May you all get severe diarrhea for trying to take books away from kids and make queer literature less accessible simply because you're a bunch of uncomfortable control freaks with no hobbies and no joy. I hope that you all have flat tires and that your AC goes out in the middle of summer, in the middle of the night. Everyone leave your most inconvenient wishes upon these people below. Leah Johnson, however, deserves all the best. She has been a staunch advocate for representation in literature, defending queer youth, and Black joy. In January of 2021, she said on Twitter, "Not even 5 years ago, I didn't want to come out for fear of persecution and alienation from my family and my faith. Now my mom is a state representative, currently one room over, working on drafting a bill to ban conversion therapy in the state of Indiana. It does get better." Damn, I wish my mom would draft bills to end conversion therapy. I wonder if Leah's mom will adopt me. Does she need any more queer kids? Because I could use a mom. But Leah's mom is not the only person putting in the work to fight fascists. Leah herself is putting in that work. Fighting fascism is a family endeavor, apparently. So if any of my family members could join me in that, I would greatly appreciate it. She's been talking about the attempts to not only ban access to her books since publishing, but also talking about the treatment of queer students in U.S. schools, specifically like this case in her home state of Indiana. "This is in Indiana. Tell me how we don't weaponize school-sanctioned dances, events as a means for perpetuating queerphobia, transphobia, racism, etc. Ask me again why a book about how being too visibly queer in a small town is literally a threat to your life is realistic." And she encourages people to sign this petition. At Carroll High School, the students nominated a trans woman for homecoming king and dead named her. She also came across another thread. She said, "I stumbled across a thread on here the other day where a parent was attempting to get my book banned from their daughter's required reading list because no 7th grader should be reading that stuff. I knew this might happen sometime, but wow, on this week of all weeks it got me. If that stuff is queerness without trauma and blackness without pain, then not only do 7th graders need to read it, we all do. In a world that tells Black women our lives are disposable, that we don't deserve safety or care, I'll always write towards our liberation. Stay mad." This tweet is referencing a thread made by this dumbass homophobic dad. "This is a slide from my 7th grade daughter's English class this morning regarding books they should read. Why is the school board allowing homosexuality to be pushed onto 7th graders? Who got to decide that my daughter must be exposed to this? It's just a book, dude. Check out these 8 books, part of the same PowerPoint sent to my daughter. Some of them include both LGBTQ and critical race theory subject matter. Why are they forcing my 7th grade daughter to read these leftist books?" Leftist book? Why is Psy the leftist book? I have read 5 of those books and I would give them to a 7th grader. I would have loved them as a 7th grader. There's literally nothing wrong with any of those books. And also, I can't think of anything in them that's critical race theory. So, critical race theory is for higher education. It's talking about race is not critical race theory. Black folks existing, Black kids existing is not critical race theory. Like, stop it. Look at me, fellow parent. Listen closely. Turn these listening ears on. If you are concerned, then opt out. I opt out my kids from stuff all the time. Florida recently approved Prager University as curriculum for our public schools. You know what I did? I sent in a note and I opted out. If your homophobia and your racism are that important to you, dickwad, then opt out. By the way, again, I've read over half those books and they're great. The Poet X is one of my all-time favorite books. Your kid's just going to be missing out on great books, but they're being raised by a parent who probably doesn't read at all anyways outside of conspiracy theories on Facebook. So anyway, back to Leah. On March 1st of 2021, Leah Johnson got a direct email from a concerned parent, which as a fellow parent, kindly shut the fuck up. And it said, "I'm writing to express a genuine concern. To keep this short, my daughter and I are reading this together, and at the end of chapter 11, I was highly disappointed to read the detailed emotions of Liz being attracted to another girl. I don't know what happens beyond this because we ended at that chapter, and I'm trying to determine if we should continue on with the reading or not. In my opinion, this was very irresponsible of the author Leah Johnson. We are not forewarned of this type of content as parents to young readers." It is the nicest, most chill chill YA book. There is no like sexual content in it at all. It's just like a very sweet romance and a coming of age story. Chill out. This could have been somehow creatively expressed in a disclaimer. A disclaimer for being queer. You realize that y'all don't have to do that about your straightness, right? This book contains straight relationships. Like, what? This could have been somehow creatively expressed in a disclaimer or whatever kind of system writers put in place to alert readers on such content. The most frustrating part is that it snuck up on us after reading half the book. This really sucks. Obviously, this is the way of the world today, but I still think we have a choice on the content, particularly with young audiences. You not knowing how to fucking Google is not the author's problem. Thanks for your understanding. Nobody understands why you are so stupid, ma'am. And Leah responded saying, intellectually, I know there are a lot of people who don't believe books about queer kids are actually appropriate for children, but sometimes I get a letter from a parent like this one that reminded me of the fact that it's such a shock to the system that it physically pains me. That's awful. She talks a lot about public education as well. On March 13th of 2021, she said, public education is inherently political by the very nature of how public schools get their money, how their curriculum is chosen, and who makes the decisions. This politics doesn't belong in the classroom take is so reductive. In October of 2021, author/librarian Angie Manfredi took to Twitter to express her dismay over a school district uninviting Newbery Award winner Jerry Craft, author of New Kid and Class Act, because the fascist book banners called that too critical race theory, a term that they could not accurately define even if it was tattooed on their left ass cheek and you gave them a mirror. Angie has a great thread about this that I'll link below, but Leah also chimed in. I want to be clear that Leah is talking about the fascists and not to Angie. If your concern was truly about what your child is learning, then you'd pull your kid out of school the day of the visit and excuse them from doing the work, but that's not what you want. You want power. You want to dictate the terms of everyone's education louder to suit your racism. I know some people say it's a badge of honor to have their books banned or have parents up in arms about their visits because that means they've done something right, but like, there's a black kid in this district who needed to see Jerry to know that they could make it out. There's a kid who now knows that their classmates' parents, and likely their classmates too, believe that they don't deserve to speak out about their experiences of harm, don't deserve to tell the truth about the things that hurt them, and that just makes me sad. It's not these idiot adults that lose when books are banned or curriculums are limited in an attempt to eliminate any discussion of race. It's the kids. They deserve better than a narrow education that caters to the whims of a loud, vitriolic, racist few. They just do. It's really important to me when like other people care about kids like mine, and that's what's frustrating about going to my school board and talking to the fascists, is because I can tell that they don't care about my kids or me or anybody but themselves. No, not the gay makeup. Then February of 2022 hits. Found out my book is under investigation by the Oklahoma Attorney General for being, quote, obscene. So if you think less curse words or kissing or references to drinking or drugs are going to keep queer books from being banned, they won't. To them, obscenity is inherent to queerness. At this point, books like Crown get banned somewhere every week, but there's something especially sinister about using obscenity as the language to describe a queer black girl just existing. I'm really sad, I'm not gonna lie, but they want us to be silent and ashamed, and I refuse. In March of 2022, too many of y'all got the idea that just because the occasional banned book hits the bestseller list that it means book banning is widely profitable for authors, and let me tell you that for most of us, book banning just ends our careers. There's nothing cute about queer books being removed from shelves. It's not some backhanded compliment that means we're doing something right. It just means that people hate us enough to say our stories are too indecent for children to read. I'm not happy about that. I'm sad as fuck. Also in March of 2022, if you're a teacher or a librarian that's open to having a very queer, very black author come to your students and talk about the importance of telling your story regardless of who wants you to be silent, let me know. I'm taking on more school visits this year out of spite alone. Yes! Do I have time? No. Have I been hit with a renewed sense of purpose to be loudly and visibly queer because lots of people don't want me to be? Yes. And Leah did exactly this, showing up to speak in classrooms and libraries where she was invited and donating her book to libraries in need of books. You know those days when you are reminded of why you do what you do? Definitely had one of those days today thanks to by Leah Johnson, who I highly recommend to any school for an author visit. Our kids were obsessed and us teachers too. I would love if my kids' school would have her there. My kids are a little too young for YA books, but when they're old enough, I would love to have her meet them. In February of this year, 2023, FSG Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, announced that George M. Johnson and Leah Johnson, my two first episodes of Authors Behaving Excellently, no relation, will write 2 romantic comedies starting in 2025 with There's Always Next Year. This story is set around New Year's Day and tells the story of 2 cousins trying to get their their lives, their romantic lives, and their regular lives back in order. Of this, they said, there is an African proverb that states, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That is what the collaboration experience has been with Leah Johnson. As Black queer people, we are much more powerful when we combine our writing, creativity, and world build as authors together, George M. Johnson said in a statement. And Leah said, if the book is even half as fun to read as it was to write, then brace yourself. As books about queer folks continue to face bannings and challenges across the country, writing a book that's rooted in joy about the way we love one another feels like a liberatory act. The fact that both of these authors are such wonderful people and are doing so much work for readers in general, but especially young queer kids, young queer Black kids in particular, the fact that their books are getting banned is just such an atrocious thing to me. Having read from both of them, I can't tell you what an incredible resource both of their books are. Leah continued saying, my hope is that by continuing to put this kind of work out in the world and being loud and visible, queer authors, we can affirm to young people everywhere that their stories do now and will always matter. But that's not all, because she's not done fighting book bans and writing outspokenly queer stories. June 19 of this year, Leah Johnson made a huge fucking announcement. This has been one of the worst years in history for book banning, but they can't ban us or our stories, which is why I'm so excited to announce that I'm opening a freaking bookstore. Loudmouth Indie will be Indie's only banned bookstore, and I'm excited to bring it to life. Loudmouth Books is all about uplifting the work of marginalized authors and highlighting diverse stories. Please consider donating to help this dream become a reality. Loudmouth Books is being financed through Johnson's advances and the royalties from her other books and from the GoFundMe that she raised money through. She raised $16,000 on a $10,000 goal. $15,000 was raised in 24 hours. She explained in this interview in Publishers Weekly that she was compelled to act in response to the avalanche of bills being introduced in state legislatures around the country that are intended to restrict access to books, as well as recent legislation that openly discriminates against LGBTQ+ people. She said, one of the scariest bills for me as a writer is right here in Indiana. HB 1447 is a book banning bill that not only makes it easier for books about queer and BIPOC folks to be challenged, but also makes it easier to criminalize teachers and librarians for keeping those books available to young people. She talks about her book, You Should See Me in a Crown, being removed from shelves, saying, watching them be removed from shelves, I felt like my hands were tied. All of us were just looking for a way to get these stories into the hands of readers who need them the most. It's hard to do that as a writer because all I can control is the book itself, but as a bookseller, it's a different ballgame. It's a private business. They can't tell me that I can't sell books I want to sell. This is the most empowering course of action for me right now. She's still under contract for 3 more books, but there's going to be a decrease in writing for her after that, and she is going to work on her bookselling business. Loudmouth Books is also going to hold a monthly event called Clear the Shelves. Once a month, young people can come in and take a book from the shelves free of charge. For all of these reasons, I am so proud to have Leah Johnson on this list of authors behaving excellently. Please go follow Loudmouth Books. I have linked them down below. And if you can, either buy a copy or request her books from your library. I really do recommend You Should See Me in a Crown if you have a student library that is not banning queer books. It's a great book for teens, I think, especially if you're looking again for rep for sickle cell anemia. That is in there as well. Like, I can't name another book that has sickle cell anemia rep. As far as the book banning goes, this is really going like above and beyond the call of duty. Authors, readers, reviewers, editors, we all need to come together to fight book banning and support books and readers and kids. By supporting books, we support people. By allowing representation to exist, we support kids and we let them know that their existence as they are matters. By supporting books, we support communities, not just our own, but others. Book banning has never, ever had a positive outcome. There has never been a case in which that has happened. Banning books does not make anyone safer. Banning books does not make anyone smarter, and banning books does not make anyone feel less alone. Be on the right side of history like Leah is. Support her work, support her bookstore. Thank you for watching, and fuck the fascists. Leave your comments and questions down below. Please go check out Leah's books. Please go support her and her bookstore, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, so now I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Allie Magpie, Amanda M, Bubble Tea, Kimmy, Chrysler, DJ Rocktopus, Emperor's New Blues, Aaron, Eric, Faror, Harley, Jack and Jill, John E, Calais No K, let me know if I'm saying that wrong, Casey McKenzie, Kate W, Caitlin, Kelly K, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Leck, Alice, Peggy Lou, Rain, Reese, Samar, Scarlett, Shiny, SMK. Thank you all so much for being a friend. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Max's patrons, and those are AM Angel, Alicia, Amanda, Andy, Angelica, Anita, Artie the Ninth, Ashley, Ava, BB, Beck, Blythe, Bookish Brainrot, Ray, Bree, Brian, Caitlin, Carlin, Catherine, Kathy, Chris, CJ, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Corey, Darren, Deborah, Diet Goth, Dorothea, Ebby, Elise, Ember, Emily A, Emily L, Emma, Aaron, Hannah C, Hannah T, Harpy Kuro, Haley, Hello There Darling, Ilianaka, India Inks, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jen H, Jen Michelle, Jennifer T, Jenny G, Jillian, Jess Pugsley, Kaylee, Kat, Katie, Katya, Kayala, Kendra, Kylie, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura, Lauren B, Library of Scars, Lisa B, Lou Siri, Luna Moth, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Marcella, Marquita, Maz, Malara, MK Books, Molly, James, Nat, Natalie, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Nyan Binary, Paige E, Paige P, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Pixel Stars, Puratheon, Rachel B, Rat Sarah, Reba, Rebecca, Ren, Robin, Rosie, Rowan, Other Rowan, Secoria, Samantha, Sarah, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shaymed, Shanae, Shannon, Shayna, Sheena K, Sierra, Stephanie, Talia, Three Old Dogs, Tiana, Tina, Toast, Trash Can Teddy, Title Phoenix, Valentine, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being a friend.